I'll put on my thing.
Okay, guys, we are live on Facebook.
Thanks, Teresa. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Talking about some amazing products, new, that'll be shipping out this week. And we've got a fantastic MD. We were chatting beforehand, and I'm excited for what he has to tell us in a future relationship with this guy. But Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, amigo. How are you?
Good. Glad you could join us.
Same here. Need some music playing in the background, right?
Elevator music.
Get some Jay-Z going on.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Jay-Z. That's good.
Jonathan wants Nelly.
Or that. Yeah, sure.
Hey, don't be giving away all my secrets, Travis.
Yeah.
Some good old Nelly. Can't go wrong with Nelly.
I don't know.
My face looks really red. Does it look that bad on the? Is it just my screen?
It's just your screen. No.
Yeah,
It looks pretty red.
my face always looks red.
I feel like I literally like tomato paste on my face.
No, you're good. I actually, yeah, I got sunburn.
I gotta get some lights.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
Unfortunately. All right, Trav. 60 seconds. You get started.
Got it. Hey, welcome.
You guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Still? Okay, great.
Yeah, you okay as well?
Yep.
Jonathan? Good.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody, welcome to the afternoon Zoom call. We have a special guest on here today. We have Dr. Steve Morris. I'm going to introduce him in just a second. He's the one wearing the white coat.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of magic in that office that he has right there, and I can't wait to share that.
Yes.
We're talking about this product right here. As you know, we just launched this product. This is our Delight product. It's an all-natural zero-carb sweetener that actually increases insulin sensitivity, as well as lowers your blood glucose levels. And to a lot of us, that may sound like Greek. And so I appeal to an authority, an MD, who can actually explain to us exactly what insulin is, how it works in our bodies, and how we want to manage it and why it's important to manage it as well. So with that, I'm going to do, Steve, if you don't mind, I'm going to read just your introduction. I know it's...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I know you're going to be a little because it's so stacked, but I think it's important for everyone to hear exactly, who you are, what you do, the training, the experience, what you put into your life work, and to share just this little paragraph and a half about what that is. So I'm going to go ahead and read that, introduce you, Dr. Morris, and then I will turn the time over to you. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Morris is a passionate and gifted physician, currently serving as a scientific advisor and principal formulator in the personal care and nutraceutical industry. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Behavioral Science and Health with minors in Chemistry and Sociology from the University of Utah in Salt Lake City in 2006. He was awarded his medical degree from University in Des Moines, Iowa in 2010. Dr. Morris went on to receive 400 extra hours of study in the fields of osteopathic and alternative medicine during his medical training. He then completed his internship and postgraduate training in family and urgent care medicine in 2013. During his undergraduate and medical training, Dr. Morris was engaged in clinical research, authoring 2 articles in the American Journal of Cardiology. During his practice, he was actively involved in treating a wide variety of illnesses, including diabetes, heart disease, obstetrics. I probably slaughtered that word.
Yeah, you got it. No, that's it. Yep, obstetrics.
And musculoskeletal disorders. After his formal medical training, Dr. Morris became intrigued with the field of nutraceuticals and natural medicine. His passion for discovering alternative ways to promote healing and well-being is shown through the 100+ novel and scientifically proven formulas he has developed both in personal care and the nutraceutical field. Dr. Morris has extensive experience in writing and developing human clinical study protocols for the dietary supplement and medical industry. He is constantly researching new cutting-edge ingredients that have scientific evidence to substantiate clinically relevant claims. He currently works at Life Tech Pharma located in Ogden, Utah. And I just want to say I had a few instances to chat with him, and I'm very impressed with his background, with who he is. We've already connected on going up there and meeting him in person and going through his facilities, looking at some great new formulations that we could partner on and bring to Life as just more products out there. But today we want to focus primarily just on the insulin story. Dr. Morris, I know that you know a lot about it, how it affects us, and I'm excited to also be a student and to learn exactly what you have to say about insulin and how this product, the Light, will actually help with that. So I'll turn the time over to you, Dr. Morris.
Awesome. Thanks so much. No, I'm glad to be here. I enjoy doing this. I don't know if I'm necessarily the greatest at it, but I enjoy doing it nonetheless. Insulin resistance is a hot topic right now. It has been for a while. I mean, 1 in 3 adults in the U.S. has some form of insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome. That's huge. 1 in 3. And, you know, it's only, unfortunately, probably going to get worse. The good news is that it's preventable, number one. And number two, in most cases, it's reversible. So don't lose hope if you're in that position, okay? But I kind of wanted to lay some groundwork first, just with regards to like how our bodies function, like how they use fuel, right? And I call it fuel metabolism. So how do we break down the molecules or the things that we take in and then convert it to energy so we can move around, right? There's 4 major organs that work together. I'm gonna just share. I've got a couple pictures and I hope they work. There's 4 major organs, and this isn't showing all 4 of them clearly, but this is the digestive system basically in a nutshell. But the liver, the brain, muscle, and then adipose tissue or fatty tissue are the 4 major organs that work together. And they control the metabolism and how we take nutrients in, and then how do we utilize them. Their integration, or the way that they work, is coordinated by basically 2 main hormones. And the one you mentioned already is insulin. Second one is glucagon. And so we'll touch briefly on glucagon, but mainly on insulin today. Let's see. I want to bring this next slide up here to show you guys. You're probably like, what the heck is this? But this is a slide from a microscope. Okay, insulin, as many of you probably know, is made in the pancreas, and it's made in a particular cell called a beta cell. Okay, and then we have these really funky named things where the beta cells reside, called the islets of Langerhans. Okay. But this is basically what it looks like under a microscope in your pancreas. Okay. The interesting thing is these islets, this circle you see here, only makes up like roughly 1 to 2% of the total cells of our entire pancreas. Our pancreas does a lot more than just make insulin. Okay. Let me stop sharing that. Okay. But the one thing to know about insulin, and it's probably the most important one, is that it's anabolic. And what does that mean? Anabolic means that it builds. It doesn't tear down. So insulin builds. All right. I like to think of it. I found this really good depiction. This is what I would always use for patients. Right here. If you can see that, I like to think of insulin as kind of like a lock and key type mechanism. All right. We can have all this glucose, all this fuel out here outside the cell, but it can't go in unless insulin is there to unlock it. Okay. So it's literally the key to the lock that opens the cell and allows glucose to go in and be utilized by every cell in the body. Okay. So think of it that way. It allows the sugar to go in. Its other main functions is that it increases the storage of what's called glycogen, which is the storage form of sugar in the liver. Okay, so when we eat, insulin is released. It then allows sugar to enter the cell and do what it needs to do, but it also takes the excess and stores it in the liver for later when, let's say, you're fasting or not eating, and your body needs a little bit of extra fuel, it then can release it. Okay, so it does that as well. And then the other thing that you need to know is that insulin actually increases protein synthesis, so it builds muscle in effect. So insulin's not necessarily a bad guy. We'll talk about when it can be, but insulin is a good thing. And that's a lot to do. It only has a half-life of about 6 minutes, which means once it's left or it's excreted out into our bloodstream, half of it is already degraded in 6 minutes. So it very quickly in and out of the body. What causes it to go up? Well, sugar, carbohydrates, amino acids, in particular, arginine and leucine. Okay. And I know that the Delight product contains leucine. Leucine is a very, very important amino acid that helps to stimulate insulin, and it's basically the sensitivity of it at the cell. Okay. What else raises it? Well, some things we call intestinal peptides. And one of those happens to be GLP-1, stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. If you read more about the product that Delight that we're talking about today, you'll notice that it increases this peptide. And if you read about this peptide, you'll see what a great molecule it is, and it's kind of on the forefront of research right now. It's actually made in these cells in our distal ileum, which is the small intestine and large intestine, and it's excreted. And when it comes out, it stimulates the actual production of insulin. It also increases those islets that I showed you, the size of those islets. And then probably the most important thing that it does is it actually crosses into the brain, and it increases satiety. So it decreases your hunger. So this is a really important part of basically what we're talking about today. There are things that lower insulin. Okay, stress, fasting, and then kind of along the same lines of stress and fasting is epinephrine or adrenaline. So when we exercise or we're fight or flight, those things tend to lower the insulin level in our body. Glucagon, we'll move to the second of the two main hormones. It's made in what are called alpha cells. Okay, and they look virtually identical to beta cells under the microscope. But glucagon is catabolic. And what that means is that it breaks things down. It does not build. And you might think, well, that's not a good hormone then. It is when you need blood sugar. Those of you who are hypoglycemic like myself, you know how miserable it feels to be hypoglycemic. Glucagon then goes into action. And what it does is it breaks down, if you remember that storage form of blood sugar or sugar called glycogen in the liver, it breaks that down into glucose and then spits it out so the cells can use it. It also increases this long word called gluconeogenesis, which is a fancy term for it makes more sugar. That's what this does. The other thing that it does is it breaks down lipids in the body. So the two overall things you need to know about glucagon is that it increases your blood sugar and it increases your blood lipids. That can be good, that can be bad, obviously, depending on the person, right? I want to shift gears after, we've kind of laid a little bit of groundwork and talk about this insulin resistance. Okay. You may hear the word insulin resistance or sensitivity, and it's kind of the same thing. If you want to understand insulin resistance, I did my undergraduate at the University of Utah, and one of the buildings up there, I don't know, I'm telling you this, but one of the buildings up there is named after a gentleman who was the father of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is a principle in chemistry, and the first law of that states that if you put more energy into a system than you take out, there's a net gain. So think about that for a minute. If you're consuming more energy than you're expending, there's going to be weight gain. And that equates basically to obesity, which is the number one cause of insulin resistance. Now, I don't want to stop there and say that that's the sole thing that causes it, because it certainly isn't. There are several other aggravating factors that we don't have control over, like genetics, maybe our current environment we're in. COVID-19, I'm calling it the COVID-15 because you gain like 15 pounds, not going to the gym and doing, their normal things. Your psychological and behavioral patterns, you can't always change. Certain medications that you might be on, steroids, for instance, corticosteroids that reduce inflammation, those cause insulin resistance. They can with time. Antipsychotics, certain psychological drugs can cause insulin resistance. And then for women, those women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome, that puts them at a higher risk for this as well. So it's not always just a matter of like eating less and exercising more. I don't want to say that. My mom absolutely hates doctors because that's all they tell her to do. And I wish they had more empathy and would explain that, hey, there are other factors involved with this. It's not just that. So I get it. But I want to stress that insulin resistance is a component of an overarching theme called metabolic syndrome, which is basically pre-diabetes, okay? Which, once again, I told you, like 1/3 of adults, 1 in 3 have this. This is where insulin isn't our friend, okay? What happens is the cells, they become kind of numb to insulin. So insulin comes, tries to unlock that door, and it can't. The cell's not sensitive to it anymore. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is. But that's in essence what happens. And so the body then goes, well, I need to make more insulin. So it starts to churn out, the pancreas starts to churn out more insulin and more insulin. Okay. This hyperinsulinemia is what we call it. And high glucose levels in the blood lead to further glucose intolerance, further insulin resistance, an increase in our blood pressure, an increase in cholesterol and bad lipids. It leads to an increase in inflammation, and then overall obesity. So, and those are the hallmark symptoms I just listed of metabolic syndrome. Okay. Aside from obesity, the main thing, and this is where I think Delight kind of comes in, is diet, and looking at our diets and what's called the glycemic index. Now, unfortunately, not all foods are created equal. And you may look at on the nutrition fact panel of one and another, and one may say it has less carbs than the other, but not all carbs are created equal. And so I encourage you to do your research on that and look up the foods that have lower glycemic index. It's kind of an arbitrary number. We define it as a relative rise. What a glycemic index is the relative rise in blood sugar 2 hours after consuming said food, okay? And it's rated from 1 to 100, 100 being basically sugar, okay? You want to consume foods that digest slower, okay? Those are foods that have a lower glycemic index. A number to remember is 55. If you can, look up, and there's plenty of databases online about specific foods. If it's lower than 55, that's a low glycemic index food. That's good. Delight is basically 0. So it's something you can add to foods to help make them more palatable. Some other things you can do to decrease this glycemic index is add fat, and it has to be a good kind of fat. We'll talk about that to the food. Fiber, which I'm sure a lot of you probably already know that fiber is digested very slowly. Adding acid to the food, so acetic acid or vinegar, also decreases the glycemic index. And then, of course, adding protein, like we talked about. Fats kind of got a bad rap back in the 80s and 90s, and probably before that. So did cholesterol, with being, related to heart disease, and it still is. But what we're finding out is there are a lot of good fats. Okay. The ones that you want to consume, and I'm sure you've all heard of them, are the omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. We also call them polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs. Okay. When we consume more of these, I'm going to share another picture with you here. Okay. When we consume more polyunsaturated fatty acids, okay, it makes the membrane of each cell more fluid-like. As you can see here, there's kinks in it, okay? If we consume a lot of saturated fats, it makes it very thick and viscous. Why is that important? Well, the insulin receptor that has to be able to come out here and grab onto the insulin, it can't do it if it's too thick. And so there's an emerging school of thought that the higher amount of polyunsaturated fats that we eat will replace these bad saturated fats, make the cell membrane more fluid, and allow the insulin receptors to get out there and be more sensitive, if that makes sense. I have people ask me, hey, well, what about, what kind of foods have a high glycemic index? Ripe fruit. So fruit that is really ripe has a very high glycemic index. Overcooked foods. So any vegetable, particularly the ones that are high in starch, if you overcook them, you break them down more, and what you're breaking them down to is sugar. And so it increases it. And then, of course, processed foods are really high, or have a higher glycemic index. So things that you want to avoid. And to kind of finish up, I know I've been talking long-winded here. Aside from diet, decreased activity, physical activities, is probably the number three reason for insulin resistance. Once again, energy in, energy out. Well, one thing to note: 1 pound of fat, human fat, is 3,500 calories. So it's kind of good to think in your mind there, like with regards to how much you take in, how much you actually burn, and then how much actual fat, like what's its energy currency. Okay. There's been several studies that have shown that if you increase your physical activity by at least, if you're doing just 30 minutes a day of vigorous walking and getting your heart rate up, along with dietary changes and behavioral modifications, within 4 to 6 months, you can lose up to 5 to 10% of your body weight.
Nothing wrong with it.
And so that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you do the math, it is, and that's sustainable weight loss. Okay, over 4 to 6 months. And some people see it even better than that. Some other risk factors for insulin resistance are deficiencies in vitamin D. Even though we live in here in Utah, we live in a state where we have a lot of sun most of the time, particularly right now. You'd be surprised at how many patients still come in, get their blood drawn, and their vitamin D levels are low, even being tan. So I always recommend you take cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D3, and obviously consult your physician first before you do anything, but at least 5,000 international units a day. I mean, minimum. The other thing, and this goes along with Delight, is chromium. Several studies have shown that as we age, our chromium levels decrease, and chromium is absolutely vital in making insulin, or making it more sensitive at the cellular level. It acts like insulin. So chromium is very, very, very good for you. And the kind to take is chromium picolinate or polynicotinate. Both kinds are very good. And then the last thing I wanted to just touch on that I think we often forget about is just, sleep patterns. It's been shown that, our circadian rhythm, if it's off, it contributes to so much. And one of those things, once again, is insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, obesity, diabetes. It's been shown time and time again that insulin sensitivity increases in the morning and it tends to decrease at night. So depending on how your work schedule is, what your eating habits and when you're eating, keep that in mind, that your body's going to be able to utilize the sugars better in the morning. Hence why a lot of the times we say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It truly is, because in the evening, our bodies are less sensitive to insulin. Having said that, like I said, I thoroughly enjoy helping others and being a part of formulating formulas that are science based and science backed. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Travis.
Yeah, muted. God, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Dr. Morris, I appreciate that. I took a few notes myself. There's a few things that I actually just wanted to kind of touch on. I mean, you talked about activity and
Sure.
You talked about sleep patterns.
Yep.
And one of the things we have at Lure Life is, and for everyone on this call and everybody watching this call, we have an app called My 10K Life. You can download it in the App Store. You basically download it. It's going to keep track of your steps. We encourage 10,000 steps a day. And when you do that, you earn what we call well coins, and you can redeem those for products and swag and all sorts of fun stuff. And it's at no cost to any distributor here or a brand partner here with Lure Life. And the other one was sleep patterns. We just launched this VIP 60 kit, and the kit includes our detox tea, it includes the D-Light, and it includes our de-stress. Our de-stress is a product high in magnesium and high in what's that? Melatonin to help you.
Melatonin.
Yeah.
With your circadian rhythms. And this VIP 60 kit is geared to everything that you were just saying, Dr. Morris. And it's, I think I know for myself, I've struggled, I've always wanted to, I'm never quite at the weight I want to be. I always feel like I could always use, as I age, my metabolism slows down. And so I'm always, of course, looking at diet. I'm reading about glycemic index, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've always been looking for something to work, and I've heard all these fad diets, and I've tried them, and they never really work. What would you say have you seen really work as far as someone losing weight or getting back to their pre-diabetic state they were in? You said, you mentioned you can reverse it. What have you seen, just generally speaking, that you would say works for most people to kind of change their habits and to live a better lifestyle?
Good question. I think there's two main things. One of them is to realize it's multifactorial. It's not just, and I hope I kind of touched on that there's so many things that go into it. It's not just exercise. It's not just diet. It's not just sleep. There's many things that go into it. And then each individual is different and they're going to have different things. But I think that the main thing from what I've seen for people to lose weight and keep it off is to consume lower glycemic index foods. You don't need to be going to the gym an hour every day, but get some form of cardiovascular exercise for 30 minutes a day. And then of course, along with that, there are some factors, and I mentioned this earlier, there's things that we can't change. Some of us just have genetics and different things, but all of us can at least change those two things. And when people do that and they do it at a controlled pace, in other words, they're not starving themselves. Because what happens when you starve yourself? You starve yourself, your body goes into stress mode. It then increases all the stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine, which then have the complete opposite effect of what you want. So it's multifactorial.
Gotcha. Love that. And lastly, I'd just like you, when we first met, I kind of said, what were your first impression of Delight? And go ahead and tell me, what you told me. And what I know, number one, you said you're happy that we have chromium. That's the number one ingredient. And number two.
Yeah. First thing I noticed right off the bat. I always, since I've been doing this, I've trained myself to look at the supplement facts panels of everything now. The first thing I noticed, chromium. Boom. We talked about that. 2, leucine. We talked about how important that is. 3, acetic acid. And then, I noticed it basically is a net zero glycemic index sweetener. So I was very impressed right off the bat, actually.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And, guys, I'm excited. This is going to be shipping out this week, and excited for you guys to hear the testimonials. I can tell you, I use it already. I use it to sweeten my coffee. I use it to sweeten my yogurt. And I've noticed a huge difference already in it decreasing my appetite. One of the things, Dr. Morris, I wrote down was that, and explain to me just one more time, but you said there was a part where it increases the satiety in your brain. What exactly was that? There's a hormone that's released, something that's released?
Yes. Yeah, there are several actually. So they're called intestinal peptides. And so once the intestine starts to notice that you're putting food in it, it releases into the bloodstream several intestinal peptides. One of the most important ones is GLP-1. Okay. And it goes up to the hippocampus of the brain, which is a very important part of the brain. But one of the things it does is it controls like hunger and then satiation. And GLP-1 actually increases your satiety. So it makes you feel full.
Awesome.
So you don't want to eat. Yeah.
And that really is the key. I know, with my own self and probably everyone on this call, I think there's an addiction to food. Biologically, we weren't geared to walk into a grocery store and have all of this immediate calorie consumption right before our eyes with anything we can just grab and put into our mouths, And so in a way, I think as a society, and I've seen it all over the world where type 1 and type 2 diabetes is on the rise. And I think it's because it's just the access to calories and the access to wrong calories are so easy. And we get addicted to these types. And so, part of the philosophy we have at Lure Life is let's get off that addiction. You do that through supplementation, do that through activity and changing your diet. And we're not looking to have people just lose weight. We're looking to people to change their lifestyle. And I think by having products that we have, you make better choices and you get addicted to the better choices rather than be a slave to the old choices that you've got addicted to. And
absolutely, it has everything to do with a simple chemical in the brain called dopamine. And dopamine provides pleasure, and dopamine is released whenever we eat, specifically foods high in sugar or cholesterol or fat or whatever. And yeah, we get addicted to dopamine, and that's the chemical behind all addiction, not just food.
Right. So, Well, Dr. Morris, we appreciate you. We're looking forward to having you on again. As I was taking my notes, I know we have an insulin video that we are just finalizing getting out, but I'm thinking we're going to have you highly involved in our company and working with us in developing new products. I'm excited to see what you have in your back pocket and that we could release here at Lure Life. All these people looking to change their lifestyles and also to share a good message with their friends and families and anybody who wants to join them with the business partners. So thank you for your time today, Dr. Morris. I know you're busy. I know you were telling me about you're getting certified
Thank you.
and stuff like that. So this is a small distraction for you, but everyone here, I'm sure also.
A good one.
Yeah, thanks, and I appreciate that. Thanks for your time. So with that, everybody, we'll call this a wrap, and Dr. Morris will be in touch. Thank you all for joining.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's shipping out this week, so be excited to get that. We're going to be following up on testimonials with you all. Thank you all for joining, and share this with anyone who is interested in to hear what insulin is and how it works in your body. So thank you again, Dr. Morris.
You bet. Thank you.